Today, March 19th, 2013 on Satan's calendar is the first day of the first month on our Creator's restored calendar. This is an extremely significant day in his end-time timeline. Much has been unfolding on the world scene that has led us to this day. Peter the Roman, Satan's last leader of the Roman Empire that now goes by the name Francis I, was inaugurated as their head puppet today. Chemical weapons are being deployed in Syria. According to the prophet Isaiah, Damascus will soon become a ruinous heap. Our Creator has been putting a hook in China and Russia's and their allies' jaws to raise them up against the scattered nations of Israel. Iran continues to prepare to wipe those whom they call the infidels off of the West off of the map. North Korea is putting forth their own propaganda in a video showing that the White House and Capitol Hill are in their crosshairs. And much, much more is happening on the world scenes as we march forward to the day of Yahweh's wrath as the armies are being drawn to battle. Today is also the anniversary of some significant events that are recorded in the scriptures. Since Yahweh is mirroring this 377-day timeline of the flood in his end-time timeline, I will start with speaking about this day being the anniversary of Noah removing the covering off of the ark. This is recorded in Genesis chapter 8. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off of the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. There is a lot being said in these two verses. First of all, the 601st year of Noah's life, when he and his family stepped off the ark, is symbolic of it being the first year after the 6,000 years of man's error. Yahweh's timeline has revealed that these 6,000 years were cut short by 228 years for the first fruit harvest last year. Therefore, the first fruit harvest happened in the year 5772 on the restored Feast of First Fruits. Today begins the first year following the year of this harvest, thus the reference to the 601st year. The shortening of the 6,000 years was one tier of Yeshua's parable that the days would be shortened. Today we begin the year 5773 from the time that our Creator put Adam and Eve in the garden. We are exactly 70 days from January 8th. January 8th was the first day of the 377-day countdown to January 20th, 2014. 70 days is significant in this as well. After Yeshua's parable of the fig tree, which was a prophetic tier of the first fruit harvest happening this past summer, he made a reference that this generation will not pass before they see the things come to pass, the end-time events. And ever since the time of King David, the scriptures record that man's average lifespan would be shortened from 120 years, like it had been shortened 220 years earlier, to 70 years. There are other references to the number 70 in the scriptures as well, but because of what I'm being given to share with you today, I only have time for the highlights. The number 70 is the result of the addition of two other key numbers that are recorded in the scriptures and also included in Yahweh's end-time timeline. 40 days and the 40 years are woven throughout the events that are recorded in his word, and different tiers to them have been woven throughout the witness that Yahweh has sent me to you with. 40 days after January 8th was the 17th day of the second month on Satan's calendar. It is important to understand that Satan is not the ultimate author of his calendar. He is merely a pawn in Yahweh's building of his family. Yahweh created him. He created both good and evil. He put a hook in Satan's mouth to cause him to bring forth his perversion of his calendar. He was placed here to do so, to cause stumbling blocks and such. So the reality is, Satan's calendar is part of Yahweh's creation. It is just that it is the part that represents the rebellion to Yahweh. All of the way through this, Yahweh has mirrored his timeline into Satan's calendar to mock him and to mock those who follow his lies and to show that this is actually his show and not Satan's. Yahweh closed the door of the ark on the 17th day of the second month on his calendar. Today we are 30 days after the 17th day of the second month on Satan's calendar, and this 30 days lands on the first day of the first month, the day that Noah was told to remove the covering. I will expand on the different tiers of the 30 days that have already unfolded in our Creator's timeline, along with those which are yet to unfold in the coming 307 days in another video. These 30-day periods are very significant in what they testify to, considering the Hosea and the Zechariah prophecies for 1 month, what he says he's going to accomplish in 1 month. This is especially significant when also coupled with Yahweh's restoration of the 30-day month. I said that there is a lot said in these two verses. First off, notice that in verse 13 that his word says that the face of the ground was dry. Then in verse 14 his word says that 56 days later the earth was dry. Not only that, in the verses preceding these verses, his word says in verse 3 that the waters began to recess 164 days before the first day of the first month. This was the day that Yahweh recorded that he remembered Noah. This was the 17th day of the 7th month. So the question is, why the reference to the earth being dry 56 days apart in these verses? I mentioned the other day that 56 days prior to January 20th of next year is the 25th day of the 11th month on Satan's calendar. The 25th day of the 11th month on Yahweh's calendar is the anniversary of the third dove being let loose. This day landed on February 11th this year, the same day that Ratzinger announced his resignation to set up Peter the Roman to merge onto the scene. In Yahweh's 377-day count of the flood, there were 36 days between the third dove and Noah removing the covering. In lieu of what happened with Ratzinger's second dove being attacked by the seagull before his resignation, if you think these things are coincidences, you are deeply asleep. This event with the seagull was also a foreshadow of what is soon to come. Yahweh has been sending wave after wave of warnings that are woven into his timeline with signs like these. I'll show you what the seagull that attacked Ratzinger's dove was symbolic of in Isaiah 34. Because in the day of Yahweh's vengeance, in the year of his recompense for his controversy with Zion, the streams will be turned into pitch, and the brimstone will make the land to be dust and a burning pitch. This is another reference to that it will be as it was in the days of Noah. The Hebrew word that is translated into pitch in these two places in this verse is only used one other place in the scriptures. It is part of that which Noah sealed the ark with. For reasons that I discussed yesterday, the double reference of the pitch in this verse is not a coincidence either. Continuing on in verse 10, and it will not be quenched day nor night, and the smoke from it will continue to rise up from generation to generation, and it will be laid waste, and none will pass through it forever and ever. He will stretch out his measuring line upon the vain and empty, or the void stones, and the cormorant and the bittern and the owl and the raven will seize it, and they will dwell in it. The so-called Hebrew scholars do not know exactly what the bird is that they translated as cormorant. They think maybe it is a pelican. Whatever the bird is, indications are that it is a sea bird, and so is a seagull. They also do not know for sure what the bird is that they translated as a bittern. One of the definitions that Spiros Zodhiates gave for it is a long-legged wading bird. They are not even sure what the Hebrew word that they translated as an owl is, but it is a word that apparently comes from a word that describes an aquatic bird, according to the definitions. And I am sure that most of you know that a raven is a scavenger, and so are seagulls. So in a way, the seagull matches the description of each of these four birds in part. So again, do you think that it is a coincidence that a seagull attacked the second dove that Ratzinger let loose that day? Is the use of the word pitch in these same verses also a coincidence? Keep in mind that these verses are directly associated with the day of Yahweh's vengeance. Isaiah recorded this in verse 18, leading up to these verses. Verse 8. I will give you another witness to what I'm speaking about, since Yahweh's word must be measuring line upon measuring line, here a little, there a little. Zephaniah 2 verse 14 also speaks about the bittern and the cormorant. This verse says that they will lodge in the lintel and sing in the windows. The definition for a lintel is part of the architect of a building. The seagull attacked Ratzinger's second dove on the ledge of a window next to him. The seagull was certainly singing in victory. The seagull did not kill the dove because it was just a warning. Just like all of the warnings that Yahweh has sent have merely been warnings to date, although many have already died as a result of some of these warnings. Here is another example of a warning that Yahweh has recently sent. I heard that the asteroid DA-14 that buzzed by the Earth on February 15th was the closest flyby that they know of ever by such an asteroid. And on the same day, most of you know about the meteor that exploded over Russia. I read an article the other day that said that the month of February was full of our planet getting pelted by tons of other space rocks like this, like never before, at least that they know of. These are his warnings of the fire and the brimstone that is soon coming. It is not a coincidence that they named that close flyby DA-14 when our Creator is sending his day of judgment in the year AD 14 on Satan's calendar. He put the hook in whoever named that asteroid to name it that way. But these warnings are not what is important anyway. What is important is why he is sending them. He is crying out for you to consider your pathway and to warn you to turn from it. I'll continue on with the reference to the earth being dry in Genesis 8. Put the verse back up here. The account of the flood contains much symbolism in it. The phrase, the waters were dried up from off the earth, is symbolic of the water that we must be baptized under being dried up and desolated. The Hebrew word for dried means utterly desolated or made waste. There are none but those who are aboard the ark at this time who are seeking to meet his condition to turn the water that we must be baptized into his son's shed blood with all of their being, with their entire heart, soul, and mind. The shame of your nakedness is about ready to be uncovered and exposed. The next phrase in verse 13, the face of the ground was dry, means the soil was desolate or laid ruin before Noah's face. We are made from the dust of the ground. In verse 14, 56 days later, it is a different word altogether than the two words used in verse 13. It can mean dried up as well, but more from a withered point of view in the way that denotes shame. I do not know how the following 307 days are going to unfold, but I do know that Yahweh is going to show you the shame of your nakedness, and whether you will hearken to him or forbear will be a matter of choosing life or death. Will there be physical drought to go along with his humbling? Absolutely, along with the other plagues and pestilences that are about to be unleashed upon you if you continue in your rebellion. And I will expand on these, including the drought, as we move forward. I am just telling you today that one tier to the covering of the ark has been removed. The 27th day of the second month will be on May 14th. At some point in this, the wave after waves of warnings are going to stop. I said the other day that it was not a coincidence that Peter the Roman was elected on the 13th. The 13th was the 25th day of the 12th month. Jeremiah recorded in Jeremiah chapter 52, verse 31, and it came to pass in the 37th year of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah's captivity, on the 25th day of the 12th month, evil Merodach, king of Babylon, lifted up Jehoiakim, the king of Judah's head, and brought him forth out of prison in the first year of his reign. And he spoke kindly to him, and set his throne above the thrones of the kings that were with him in Babylon. And then in Revelations chapter 17 we read, verse 18, and the woman, the mother whore, which you saw, is the great city, Rome, the Vatican, which reigns over the kings of the earth. So you see, Peter the Roman's inauguration on the first day of the first month is very significant indeed, just like the day that he was elected to replace Ratzinger is significant indeed. In the previous verse it says that Yahweh put their role in this, in their hearts, in order to fulfill his will, which is to build his eternal family. They are here to help him do so, just like Satan is, to create stumbling blocks and his false calendar and all this stuff is all to test and prove us. Both 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles recorded that Jehoiakim did that which was evil before Yahweh's eyes. And of course, Yahweh even raised up Nebuchadnezzar and his son who replaced him. In these verses that raised Jehoiakim up out of the prison. Peter the Roman is being spoken of kindly as a humble man who cares for the poor and for the outcast. And it is indeed good to have a heart for the poor and the outcast. We are commanded to. However, not at the expense of leading others, including the poor and the needy whom we are helping, to worship and serve a make-believe image of the Most High. Even Mother Teresa did great works, and so have many others who have totally rejected our Creator's true righteous image and played the whore to Him by worshiping and serving that which is not His righteousness, other images of Him. I'll expand on this in future videos as we go on as well, since this is key in how this is unfolding. In the final battle between truth and all that opposes it. My point is, they are omitting the foremost and the greatest commandment of all, which is to love the true image of Yahweh Elohim with our entire life, and with all of our heart, and with our entire mind. The bottom line is, Peter and his flock, including all of the whore's daughters who flowed out from her, are having their covering removed from them, and the shame of their nakedness will soon be exposed to them. I mentioned that there are some other events that happened on this first day of the first month in Yahweh's word. Exodus 40 says in verse 1, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "You shall rise up the dwelling of the tabernacle of the appointed times on the first day of the first month." For those of you who think that the timing of his appointed times is not important, and that you do not have to observe them in the manner that he commanded us to observe them, when he commanded us to observe them, prepare to see that the covering of the ark has been removed. Prepare to see the shame of your nakedness, and prepare to become as the pitch that Noah used to seal the ark. You're going to be tried in the fire. Another match to this first day of the first month is Ezekiel 29, verse 17. It was in the 27th year, on the first day of the first month, Yahweh's word came to me, saying, "Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, made his army to enslave a great bondage upon Tyrus. Every head was made bald and uncovered, and every side was furbished, and he did not give wages to his army for the bondage of Tyrus that he had enslaved them upon them. Therefore thus saith Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will give the land of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he will carry up her multitude and plunder her possessions, and the spoil that they take will be wages for his army." It's another prophecy for him raising up people and to take the children of Israel captive. I've spoken in other videos that both Babylon and Egypt represent the captivity of Israel. This verse testifies to this. Yahweh rose up and empowered Nebuchadnezzar to carry away Judah captive into Babylon. He empowered Pharaoh to take all of the children of Israel captive in Egypt. These verses are saying that Yahweh gave the captivity of Egypt, or the captivity of Israel in general, over to the captivity of Babylon, linking the two together. Nebuchadnezzar just represents those who he raises up to do this, and the army, of course, represents all of their false shepherds and stuff that are under them that help keep the children of Israel enslaved. But of course, this is just a prophecy, because all of those are going to receive a quick understanding that they are serving their father Satan as well. But that's a whole other subject in the humbling process. I've talked about this in other videos. These verses would be a video in themselves, so I will move on to the next first day of the first month that is recorded, Ezekiel 45:18. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, On the first day of the first month you shall take a young bullock without blemish, and purge or cleanse the sanctuary. This verse is specifically referring to the end times as well here. Yahweh is going to purge his house in the coming days, the days to come. If you desire to become the planting in the millennium, where you can live to be programmed to become his seed in a latter harvest, you're going to have to turn from your rebellion to him. There are other references to the first day of the first month as well, like in 2 Chronicles 29:17, that even tie in the 8th day, and this is significant in this as well. I just touched on some of these verses today, and I will expand on them as Yahweh leads me to do so. We are only 14 days from the Passover that he commanded us to observe this year, and we're commanded to observe it as a memorial of his Passover sacrifice. It's not our sacrifice to him. I've talked about this in other videos. It's a memorial of his sacrifice to us. In this case, now that he sent his son, of him sending his son to shed his blood on our behalf. Turn from your rebellion and prepare to be purged out from before his face. The shame of your nakedness has been before his face for long enough. Turn to that which will cause him to wash your slate clean with his son's shed blood, and let him clothe you in his righteousness. Thus saith Yahweh Elohim.